Hello, everyone, and welcome. Welcome back to United in Strengths, your character strengths community, a character strengths community of the VIA Institute on Character. And I'm Ryan Niemiec, and here with Ruth Pierce, and we're with the VIA Institute on Character. And in these sessions, we have the tagline of remember, breathe, and connect. We remember that we have 24 capacities or character strengths that we can turn to. We pause to breathe throughout our day or whenever we think of it, to really get a hold of ourselves and to reground ourselves and to reboot ourselves throughout everything going on in our lives. And then third, connect. And we connect toward connecting with other people, reaching out to other people and fostering relationships. So that is what we do here. That's our tagline, what we do here in United in Strengths. And we have a structure that we go by each month. And so today's Monday falls upon our session, the third Monday of the month, in which we do community asks. So it's the one time a month in which you all have a chance to ask via questions. And those questions that you ask can be about character strengths. They can be about character strengths concepts, character strengths research, character strengths practices, specific character strengths that you're interested in. They could be about positive psychology in a larger way, questions you have there. Of course, any questions about mindfulness as well. And we just do the best we can to answer them and provide resources or point you in different directions. That's really what VIA has always tried to do, which is to point people into the right direction for the best research and practice. Sometimes we catalyze that, sometimes we put it together ourselves, and other times we point to people in a certain country, a certain place doing this particular work. And that could be a great resource too. So the questions that you have, some of them come by email over the weeks before this particular session. Some of them come into our Facebook community. All of you are welcome to join United in Strengths in Facebook. Some of the questions come that way. And then a lot of the questions, we kind of like to prioritize people asking them live right here. And you can ask them verbally, or you can ask them in the chat room. So I know I have at least one question I promised somebody by email that I would answer. But before we get to that, and while we take a moment where you all can just kind of catch your breath and take a few minutes as you listen to, I want to share a story, but as you listen to that, also think simultaneously if you have questions about character strengths that you'd like to see if we could take a crack at answering. We're happy to help. So I wanted, while we think about that for a moment, I wanted to share a story that is sort of a story from my past that was striking to me. I was spending some time this weekend doing about a day-long retreat. I've been doing that every couple of weeks, taking sort of a day to just reflect and to do some personal examination and, trying to integrate and connect things inside of myself, if you will, with regard to all of this work. And I asked myself the question of, what was a catalyst for me when it comes to character strengths? So it's an interesting question to pose to yourself. Even before I came upon VIA and became upon this classification, what catalyzed some of these concepts and some of these ideas? And so I'd be curious for you as well. What started it for you? What catalyzed strength in you in your life? And also you could ask yourself, who has inspired you in your life to character strengths? How did you sort of genetically inherit certain character strengths, or how did you learn about your character strengths through observation? So we could look at it from that angle too. But I was looking at it from the angle of just in general, where did I start to tap into these concepts? So these concepts of really seeing other people, right? So really seeing who a person is. That's a big point that we make in this character strength work, is that it's very much about seeing the person that's there. When we can notice the character strengths of the person in front of us, our client, our student, our child, our spouse, our neighbor, ourselves, our employee, our boss, the person in the media, when we can see the character strengths of any of those people, we are seeing them, using that word see in multiple ways. We're seeing who they are, perhaps seeing them at their best. So I thought, where did I learn to really start to see character strengths in people? Long before VIA came about, this was in the 1990s. And then I thought, where did I learn about looking for the good in people? It's easy to spot the negatives and the flaws and the weaknesses of people. And that's not a bad thing to be able to do. But what about seeing the good? Where did Ryan learn that? Where did you learn to do that? And one of the stories that came to me was I had the opportunity when I was in undergraduate school at Michigan State University. I had the opportunity to work with a boy with autism who had very severe autism and was highly aggressive. And I was working for a company that had people, if they had the workers go to different people's homes and do one-on-one work with people that either had a severe mental illness or severe disability. And this was perfect for me as an undergraduate student. I was studying psychology. I didn't know much about autism at the time or severe mental illness and so on. But I thought, I want to gain some experiences. I knew I was going to be going to graduate school, so I need to gain some experiences. So I took this position, and I was sort of warned that the person I'd be working with is tall, strong, mute, so doesn't speak, highly aggressive, had recently torn the cornea of his last worker's eye, and had severely injured the second one. So the last two people have been severely injured where they couldn't work with them and were hospitalized. And the psychiatrist had made up a diagnosis for this person, calling it it's horrible to even say, but they called it predator rage disorder, which isn't a real thing, but that kind of described this particular person. And so I'm hearing all of that. And as you can see, I'm not a particularly strong or expert in martial art kind of person, but, I wanted the experience, and I don't know, something in me said, this is a person in need. I've not met this person, but I'll do it. So I somehow, some way, with no experience, agreed to do this. And so I went and was spending time with this particular family, and his mother happened to be an amazing advocate and was just a great teacher of mine, actually, just able to just teach me so much about autism and how to work with people. And she's the one who taught me to see that there is a person in there behind the aggressiveness, behind the inability to speak, behind this predator-like behavior, meaning kind of aggressive or seeking out to be aggressive. There is a person in there. There's a boy in there. The boy was, somewhere around 17, but a good foot taller than me. And she taught me to look for the good. Yeah, there's lots of negatives we could spot in all of that. I mean, me just describing it to you could see all the negatives, but there's still a person that has character strengths and a lot of positive qualities here, despite the unpredictability, the impulsiveness, and so on. And so I began to work with this young boy several hours a day for the whole summer, actually. And as I was thinking about this, not only did he teach me to be able to see him and to look for the good, but I was linking it very clearly with what we've been studying these last 3 weeks here in United in Strengths, which is the 5 skills of mindfulness, right? And for those that are brand new, the 5 skills of mindfulness that researchers have operationalized are observing, describing, acting with awareness, non-judging, and non-reacting. And I thought about this looking back, so this is 25 years ago. I was like, wow, I was learning each of those different 5 levels of mindfulness with this young boy, because I learned that I needed to be very, very much observing what's going on with him. I needed to observe, his mood, right? I needed to observe his movements. Was he moving fast? Was he moving slow? I needed to watch and study his facial expressions. Is he gritting his teeth? Was he kind of doing a certain thing with his fingers? Was he making eye contact with me or not? Was he completely avoiding it? Did he just kind of storm into the room and go into the other room? I had to be a very keen observer, and I had to do it in sort of a compassionate way where I wasn't in an uncomfortable way staring or biting my nails scared. I had to just sort of casually yeah, this is just normal. I'm just kind of looking around and observe that way. So that was the observing piece. There was no time for me to go in autopilot, as we say in the mindfulness world. There's no time for me to be mindless in this situation where, there's some danger in it, in that sense. and so I would observe him and observe his rituals and observe his nuances of his facial expressions and his movement. And then slowly we would then go outside and do something. And there was a lot of the describing phase as well, because I had to try to put details to what I was observing and be able to put my own feelings. I'm feeling scared right now. I'm feeling angry right now because he just came at me, or he scratched me was his thing. He would biting and scratching were the big ways of coming at somebody. And so if he did bite or scratch me, I had to be able to let that go but be able to still put to words the feelings, the thoughts, and what was going on for me. So that was a strategy that I took of describing. And then I began to use that as a strategy when working with him, where we would be walking along outside, just the two of us in his neighborhood. It was like a suburban type of neighborhood. And I would start to just casually make comments rather than making any commands, because that could be very triggering for this particular young man. I would make a comment like, and now I feel like I might turn and turn left here. And now, I see the park up ahead. Maybe I'm going to walk to the park. And he might be walking 8 feet to my right or left or behind me or in front of me. I just kind of let him be, wherever he wanted to go, as long as it was safe. And we would go to the park. He would sort of follow me, but in his own way. So it was about giving him space, but always observing and describing to myself, but sometimes out loud to him in a very non-threatening, casual way. But I think the third mindfulness skill might have been most important, which is acting with awareness. Because I had every action, every word, and everything that I did, I chose everything very mindfully, very carefully. So everything was done with awareness. And one of the ways to sort of join him in his world and connect with him more deeply, in talking with other people who had worked with people with autism, was to imitate his behavior, but to do it in a respectful way. So we might be walking, and then he might twirl. And so I'm walking along like this, and then I would sort of just do a kind of a gentle twirl as well as we're walking down the sidewalk. And we would do that. And I wanted, of course, to do it in a way that was very genuine, not in any kind of way that might appear like I'm teasing or doing it in a trite way, but doing it in a very genuine way with the full purpose of connecting, but with full mindfulness of what's going on in him and how my body's moving. So sort of there's a gentleness, with it, maybe a little bit slower. I didn't want to make fast moves because that could also be triggering. So slow, small movements, not dramatic. I couldn't be unpredictable. So nothing unpredictable on my end. And so we did this throughout the summer as a way to connect. And, he would go in the playground and we would go to the park, and sometimes we would throw a ball and he may or may not throw it to me at all, but we'd have fun together. And if he would laugh, I would laugh. I would try to laugh at other points that were appropriate. And, we would eat together. And slowly, after a couple months, I decided to take the ultimate risk, which was to get in the same car with him and to drive him. And we're going to drive to the movie theater. So talk about the number of character strengths, so obviously bravery, because suddenly I'm going to be in this kind of close quarters with him right next to me, and he easily can attack or scratch or whatever while I'm driving. And of course, then both of our lives are at risk. So it was not without a lot of trepidation that I agreed to do it, but a lot of prudence as well, mapping out, okay, what movie will we see? When will it be least crowded? Maybe a couple people in the theater. How will we, mapping out, how will we go to get the tickets, in a way where he's not having to wait too long. He doesn't want to wait. How can we flow right into this room, get around, what food will I bring? How will we choose the row of where to seat? And all of this was a lot of prudence with bravery together in this particular situation. And the other two skills of non-judging and non-reactive. Again, it's in some degree, I didn't have much choice in the matter. I couldn't sit there and be judgmental. I had to, in a sense, to keep an open curiosity, because then that fostered me to learn more and to observe more and to get even better at connecting. There wasn't time for me to say, I did that wrong. I shouldn't have said that word so harshly. I might have triggered him. And so then I have to, let it go, learn from it and move on. And And same thing with the non-reactive. There was no time for me to get lost in my thoughts or to get lost in escapism or upset type of thoughts. I had to do what mindfulness people refer to as finding equanimity. If you've heard of that word, used a lot in Buddhist circles, but a lot of mindfulness circles, equanimity, which is basically calm under pressure. So then that's kind of what non-reactive, that skill is about, finding that sense of calmness in the face of tension, in the face of challenge. That was a key piece. And I had to show that. I might not have always been feeling calm on the inside, although I got to that point, but still always had to keep my observation describing up, but was able to calm for my initial couple of weeks. And so in that it created just a wonderful relationship for the two of us. By the way, I'll say, so the driving incident, just to finish that part of the story, did turn out fine and did go well. Although I think when we arrived home at his house, I made too quick of a comment and said something like, okay, we'll call the person John. That's not his name. Okay, John, it looks like we've arrived home now, kind of then alluding to the fact that you're going to have to get out of the car and there's no more fun movie. And he went after me in the car, but I had been parked, and I think I had prudently planned that out too, of how, I would maneuver my hand within the seatbelt to be able to open the door and sort of fall out of the car away. While also maybe kind of defending, and, I didn't want to get bit, so doing that. So that did happen in the car ride, but I only remembered that just in this moment. My memory for that experience was more of, wow, we did it. We went to this movie. I gave him his first ever, and maybe only, I don't know, experience at a movie theater. And he enjoyed the movie. We stayed the whole time, hour and a half or so. And, he got in the car, sat in the passenger seat, which was new for him too. And so we did it. I didn't focus on the part at the very end. So I used that as a story, not only for the 5 mindfulness skills that came to me of, gosh, those are some precursors to some of my mindfulness work, even though I hadn't engaged in any mindfulness training back in the mid 90s or early 90s. Actually, this would have been more early 90s. But also, again, it's about seeing the person, seeing the character strengths that were there, seeing the good, focusing on the good, but not losing sight of the bad, not losing sight of the negative. We don't want to be foolish, but striking that balance. So that struck me. I don't tell a whole lot of stories in United in Strengths, and I'm happy to tell stories, but I don't always think to. But I thought maybe I'll share that story since it's timely with the skills. Okay, so now let's turn and see what questions we have, Ruth.
So I know Anthony Poponi has got a question for us, and then Loretta's got one that may actually be incorporated into this one, so we'll see whether it covers everything.
Great.
Ruth, were you wanting me to go?
Yep. Oh yeah, sorry, Anthony. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Hi, Dr. Ryan. That was a really incredible story. You're way more brave than I am. Although maybe I'd put myself in a room with a few 4-year-olds, and that's probably just as daunting. But my question,
but I will say, my bravery is like a lower middle, I would say. So it's not a signature strength. So it's one of those things we can use our other strengths to lift up. But thank you.
Yeah. My question, I just went through a nonviolent communication training, and NVC Academy was the host for that, and they have a really good free resource on it. And I've been trying to kind of tie together a little bit of, with my background in positive psychology and in VIA, kind of trying to tie together how to utilize the needs list that comes from nonviolent communication, and how that would tie together with those other 2 approaches of VIA and positive psychology.
Yeah. Gosh, well, maybe without you or I, and you would certainly be far better than I, of giving a summary of nonviolent communication for everybody. I just speak to something that I think is really related. So those that want to do a search, just search Rosenberg and nonviolent communication, and you'll see a lot on that. You'll see practitioners that are trained around the world with that type of communication. So I have to say, Anthony, I'm not, I couldn't rattle off the needs list of that. I've not gotten formal training, but I've looked at it a little bit and talked with people that are involved in it. And the reason I love your question so much is because it links in very closely with one of my latest passions as of the last, well, one of my latest passions that we're bringing the science to, which is the science of peace. So for those, some of you attended one of our first United in Strengths sessions. So you could even go back, Anthony. We did 3 sessions on peace and character strengths. One was a half-day retreat for United in Strengths. It had 850 people that attended it for the half day. And then the other 2 are just, you could look those up, character strengths and peace. But so I think of nonviolent communication as an approach that deals with peace and creating peace among relationships and creating interpersonal peace. And, and peace is an area in positive psychology that is stunning how little attention it has gotten, because there's literally thousands of studies outside of positive psychology on peace psychology, and the different ways to look at it and approach it, but not in the field of positive psychology. So that's one area that I'm going to really try to make a difference. I'm actually spending a lot of time putting together an article on the different ways character strengths and peace connect. And so what we often think of, and you can think about this in terms of nonviolent communication terms too, is in the peace world, you can think of there being positive peace and negative peace. Positive peace involves what can we do to promote harmony, to promote equity, to promote social justice, racial justice, to promote positivity in relationships, to promote connectivity in relationships or in groups. And then negative peace refers to the reduction. What can we do to reduce aggression, reduce violence, reduce problems? So both are astoundingly important. Peace gets a bad rap, I think, because people think of it more in the negative peace terms, and that it's just about trying to decrease wars or something, and that's a part of it. But so we can think of it as positive and negative peace, and then we can think of it in terms of the levels of peace, and we can all do this, of what is it that helps you to create inner peace or personal peace. So that's one level. What is it that helps you to create relationship peace, like with your closest relationship partner? What is it that helps you to create intra-group peace among your group members, your teammates, your sport teammates, your work teammates, the people in your meditation group, your political faction, whatever it is? But then what does it take to create inter-group peace? So between 2 political parties, between 2 religious divides, between people with opposing views. And so I think that character strengths is by far the most important concept in positive psychology, to have something to say across all of those levels. I mean, I just can't see anything that even comes close in terms of in positive psychology, but yet there's nothing on it. There's nothing on it. Even in those thousands of studies on peace, you'll find a little bit on, fairness, or a little bit of forgiveness and little bits and pieces, but nobody's taken a comprehensive approach. So that's what I and VIA are doing, is taking a comprehensive approach to peace. So, so I think that would then have ramifications for people that are certified in nonviolent communication, people that are certified in restorative justice, people that are involved in these different kinds of movements that certainly align with peace. Whether they use that word or not, it's a different story. And then I think, we can look at, because there's so much character strengths has to offer. So you can look at it from the perspective of signature strengths and maybe 2 relationship partners looking to their highest strengths and how can they exchange more on that, or to create inner peace, that it's about you authentically using your highest strengths more. Then there's concepts around the specific strengths, and I could argue for each of the 24 as being relevant for peace. Look at, just to give you a contrast, Thich Nhat Hanh versus Martin Luther King Jr. Both would be argued as enormous proponents of peace, enormous paragons in this world of peace, but yet very, very different, in terms of how you would describe them. So Martin Luther King Jr., you'd probably describe as very zestful, very perseverant, leadership, and that a fiery peace, passionate peace. And many other strengths. Thich Nhat Hanh, you would describe with strengths like humility, gentleness, self-regulation for sure, prudence, and on and on. So all the 24 are relevant to peace across those different levels. So we're just at the very beginning of something I think that's very exciting. And let me give one final teaser, because I think we could talk more about this in Strengths in the future, is that we did a quick study on the VIA site where we put up a few questions about peace. This was just like 3 weeks ago, put up a few questions about peace on the VIA site after people took the VIA survey. We left those in their questions about peace and which character strengths you would use to create inner peace or relationship peace. And in 7 days, we have 25,000 responses to all these. And so I'm now going through all of that data and have gone through that data actually. And actually it has people describing it too. So why do you say social intelligence for inner peace? Why do you say zest for relationship peace? We had a question on political religious divides as well. Which character strengths are important for resolving that? So like a negative peace. So I think you can maybe tell, I mean, I want to just keep talking about this for the rest of the session. I'm very excited about it. But Ruth will tell me to shut up, I think, because we need to get at other questions, but no, Ruth wouldn't say that. But so anyway, so you've hit a nerve, Anthony. If you want to talk more about that, feel free to email me. And also I have been wanting to connect with people in the nonviolent communication world about this because it's not my specialty and it probably never will be, but yet I think there's great synergies with peace and character strengths with that. So if any of that excites you or somebody else, I bet you there's 3 or 4 people in NVM that are here. So feel free to email me and I'd like to hear more. So.
Okay.
That was really great.
I had a feeling that was going to open up the floodgates.
A can of worms.
Loretta and
you got them. And with the remaining 32 seconds we have.
Yes.
Can I just add that? I thought you pointed out something really interesting, Dr. Ryan, of like when you said positive peace and negative peace. Positive peace, it seems like you identified Thich Nhat Hanh, and negative peace of MLK and different approaches and different spaces that they're working in within peace.
Yeah, could be. I mean, I was just pointing out the character strengths, not negative or positive. I mean, I'm sure people could argue both of them, because Thich Nhat Hanh writes, I've studied him quite a bit, and he certainly writes a lot about negative peace, kind of reducing conflict and the ways to do that. And I'm sure we could talk about MLK with positive peace. I think it's both, but maybe if you were to pick one or the other, maybe each of those veers in the direction that you said, but I think both would be both. Yeah.
Okay, so I am going to call this particular topic because we do have 2 more people with their hands up. So Loretta and then Beata.
And I did promise somebody by email that I'll answer a question too. So at some point we'll get to that too.
Yes, so Loretta and then Beata and then the question by email.
Well, I see Ryan is very passionate about that particular subject and gets excited. Thank you for sharing your love of learning. That's beautiful. You mentioned earlier about the client you were seeing and how you had to use certain skills and talents. I have a nephew who at birth was diagnosed with Cornelia de Lange syndrome, which was a combination of a little mental retardation, autism, and his inability to speak with words. And one of the things that I've been inspired to use with him, and it's become even more relevant and more obvious, is that I'm using the strength to use the character strength of laughter with him, because he laughs very heartily when we can't find words to talk and share with one another. So we just kind of bust out with and he just bust out right with me. We are laughing together when we kind of when I know we've reached a point where he wants to share some words, but the only thing he can do is laugh. So I believe that the character strengths has become a major thread for me. And it sounds like it becomes a major thread to connect. I was asking earlier about the intersection of positive psychology and character strength, and you pretty much clarified that for me. And I was thinking about my Christian orientation. You asked earlier about, who do you see, the people who've influenced you to begin to look at character strength. And I have to go back to my Sunday school teacher, who exhibited a much kindness and patience and long suffering. I mean, she just had all of those character strengths that I didn't have words for, other than in the fruits of the Spirit in the Bible. So I see this there's correlation between the fruits and the character strengths just kind of meshing and melding together in that way. So, when I think about people, and then I find myself often character strength spotting, just, oh, okay. Like just yesterday after church, someone had a little, what do you call it? Kind of, they bumped heads with another leader, and it ended in that particular person signing off of the Zoom. And so there was some after work to do. But one of the things I was inspired to do was to use my character strength of, I can't remember which one it is, but we were able to resolve and get them to relook at, well, what was your behavior in all of this? What can you do differently in all of this, instead of blaming the person? What do you need to address? So I believe that was the act of positive psychology and character strength operating in that particular moment.
Yeah,
So
it's flowing through you a lot more now, and you're letting it out in different ways. When I want to comment on that first part of your story, I loved hearing that about humor. Because it's almost like that. When you said that, the metaphor of, it's like you opened a door, like in your relationship with that particular person, you open that door of humor. And I think that's how we could think about these character strengths, is that when we start to use them, maybe when we wouldn't have otherwise, or we start to spot them, new doors are being opened in that relationship. And what happens when we open a new door? New connections, new possibilities, new positive changes.
absolutely.
So that's exciting to see that. We open whatever door we can, and we have so many doors with these 24 strengths. There's so many ways to use them, kind of really infinite ways. So many ways we can open those doors.
Well, just so that as of today, I crafted a letter to submit to a dean at a local community college today. Ruth, where are you? Just so you know, I'm following through on getting the character strength concept in the hands of local community colleges. So I'm promoting and pitching to say, hey, can we think about putting some course curriculum together? So here is my letter. So I'm moving forward.
Great. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Great to hear all that. Thanks, Loretta. A lot of good comments about it in the chat too. Thanks.
Beata?
There. Okay, so I'll make this quick. And so I think this will hit the psychology end more. Why is it that you think that we can use our character strengths when you're not emotionally diverse in a person or something like that? Because when you were describing your experience with the young man, when my boys were young, one of their friends had been diagnosed with Tourette's. And then I later met one of Canada's first gentlemen that was diagnosed with Tourette's. So he's well into his 50s, 60s now. But because this young child was a friend of my boys, and my twins were definitely what you call twin tizzies, you put them all together and it's crazy. I was able to calm them down, all of them, and look at them as separate people and their needs, and then learned more in regards to the older gentleman too, as to what he had to go through. But when it comes to someone that you're really close to emotionally, it's harder to distance yourself that way, to use your strengths. Any suggestions?
Yeah, well, a lot of what you're saying, Getta, I think is related to the non-reactive element of the mindfulness skills that we've been talking about. I think that we can use our character strengths when we're feeling whatever we're feeling, positive emotions, afflictive, upsetting emotions. But yeah, my observation would be that as emotions get particularly high or intense, like a whole lot of anxiety and fear, or a whole lot of sadness that's just crushing on our backs, a whole lot of anger where we're just kind of lost in that anger, we're just furious about something, then it's harder to turn to mindfulness. It's more challenging to turn to our character strengths. But that's the non-reactive element of mindfulness, which doesn't literally mean we don't react, but it means to be able to see that emotion happening, to be able to almost observe it in space, and to be able to find our center point, to find that equanimity again. So that's where we would rediscover our mindfulness, but it also is where we would rediscover those character strengths to be used. So some of the strategy might be to whatever is most helpful for managing the emotions. So whether that's to talk about it, whether that's to journal about it, whether it's to exercise about it, whether it's to reflect on it, whether it's to face it in meditation or yoga, there's all sorts of ways we could do to manage our feelings a little bit. So, and in terms of, you would then bring forth the character strengths in any possible way. So it could be that you set up certain reminders for yourself to be able to remind yourself in those difficult times. You're going to be triggered when you're with that person. And so you have a little stone in your pocket that reminds you of character strengths, when you're in that conversation with that family member, or maybe you always argue when you're in the kitchen. So you have like a little reminder somehow on one of the cupboards. And then when you see that, or you feel that touch point, or you feel your necklace, whatever the cue is, it's a call back to mindfulness, a call back to character strengths, a call back from the anger that was overwhelming or the anxiety that was upsetting. And that gives us a bit of a chance. It gives us a little bit of a sense to find our footing, our grounding, because that's what we need in those situations, is to have some kind of grounding. It's not just to get rid of the emotion, bye-bye, but to find some kind of grounding in those feelings. And we all need it. I mean, with any of these feelings, nobody is immune to that. So, so thanks for that. Thanks. Yeah. A question that came in by email from Ireland, from Onya, was around. She asked, I'm just going by memory now, when or will, if, could the VIA classification change, or the VIA survey change? So she's kind of getting at, hey, you guys, the VIA Institute, are a scientific institute. Hey, you guys have these 24 character strengths and 6 virtues. This has been around since 2004 is when the classification came out. The VIA survey around sooner than that. I mean, earlier than that, even 2001, 2002. Will those things change at all? And so it's a very long answer, but I'm not going to give this one a very long answer. But I would say for the VIA survey, that's more straightforward because we're always improving the VIA survey. The measure that you all took, it underwent many iterations before the official one was even released in 2003, 2004. Iterations meaning changes, improvements, getting feedback from other people, testing it across cultures and so on. And I won't go through each date of when it was changed and to what, I bore you with I could bore you with the details and what number it went down to and, what was changed in this particular character strength or that one. But I'll say that since 2017, July of 2017 has been our latest version of the VIA survey. To get to that point was another 2 years of work by one of our senior scientists looking at every single item on the main VIA survey we had at that point and improving the readability, testing it across cultures, testing it with other measures and so on to get to what we have today. So again, since 2017, 96 questions, 4 questions per strength, good validity, good reliability test. So so that'll just keep changing. And in fact, the VIA Youth Survey, some of you that work with young people, has always been around, since the main adult VIA survey for kids ages 10 to 17. But this year, finally, we're going to be releasing a new version, which is very exciting. It's going to go down to age 8. So age 8 to 17 will take the much new and improved, again, took about 3 years to do, and testing it with teachers and kids about different ages and different disabilities and so on. So that will be released. Again, I don't have a timeline, but it's in process. So this year, 8 to 17. that one, underwent some extra challenges with the spirituality scale. Because up until that point, the spirituality scale was always religious-oriented questions, about faith and practicing a religion, which isn't as universal as spirituality is, as we've talked about that distinction in other United in Strength sessions. So the questions there's no test in the world that measures secular spirituality for kids that doesn't collide with other character strengths like love or forgiveness or humility and so on. So we had to undergo so much labor, if you will, in terms of connecting with somebody that studies the brains of kids around spirituality in adolescence, the leading figure in the world of that, and just a lot of trial and error until we came out. So we're going to be testing some items, but we finally think we've got it. So that'll be part of the new VIU survey, appropriate universal measure of that strength we call spirituality that cuts across every human being on the planet, regardless of beliefs, culture, where you're from. So that's on the VIA survey. On the VIA classification, we've always said, and this is the quickest way to say it, that would change when there's enough converging evidence from various sources. So if we get enough evidence from quantitative studies, qualitative studies, from people's reports and all different angles, different publications in the scientific field, if we get all of that converging to say, hey, love of learning and curiosity are basically the same thing, you've got to combine those two. Or, hey, there's a strength called tolerance or patience that's missing, and that needs to be in the classification. Then we would then go about that change. So, but at this point, there isn't that evidence for any particular strength to be taken away or added per se. The biggest change that has happened, or that could happen, that I've observed in the research on this, is shuffling around what category, what virtue the character strengths are under. So for example, Loretta, we were talking about humor. And humor in study after study after study is much better placed under the virtue of humanity as opposed to transcendence. And then wisdom would be second best. And this has been found again across several studies, enough where maybe that would be a change. It's not a big change, but that would be a change where, humor is more about connecting with other people, as Loretta actually perfectly gave the example of her connecting with another person. Humor was that doorway. Humor is a humanity strength first, probably. Then it might be a wisdom strength, because when people are very funny, and you know this about people in your life probably, if you think about it, if people are very funny, they're sort of thinking a couple steps ahead, aren't they? Because to tell a joke, you have to be thinking about what could be funny in the situation. You got to be drawing something ambiguous between something that is maybe true or partly true, and finding that inconsistency, that ambiguity. That's kind of what humor is. So it's clever to be funny, and to time your humor right, and to be witty, and to have satire and so on. So it makes sense as a wisdom strength as well. So those would be sort of better fitting. Now, many of the strengths fall under many categories. The other shift that is coming up a little bit is forgiveness might fit under humanity better as well, and gratitude as well under humanity. So suddenly the humanity virtue could have 3 more strengths. And again, I'm not saying it will, it's just saying that from the research, that seems to be where it could be headed, but there's still a lot that would have to happen for that. So maybe I'll stop there on that one. That's a can of worms, but it's an exciting one. It's interesting to think about. But there's no plans at this point to create a VIA classification 2. It's not like the second version's coming in a couple of years or something. So, we'll be open to science. We're a scientific institute. So we'll be open to how that evolves, and we'll follow the research and catalyze the research and look at it as honestly as we can and see what emerges. But right now, still what I, and many of you sort of have, I don't want to be dramatic here, but I'll say it anyway, fallen in love with this classification is it's very holistic. I mean, we've never had something like this before, a holistic way of looking at what's best in human beings across different levels of ways of thinking about things, ways of relating to people, ways of turning to your gut or courage, ways of managing your vices, of temperance. This is a very holistic way of looking at things. It's very conceptually clean with those virtues and the strengths. So you have to take that into mind too, is it works really strongly at a conceptual level and for practitioners, but then you have to balance that with where's the science heading in this kind of study, what are called factor analysis type of studies, which we look closely at. There's been about 15 of those published in different countries, versus qualitative studies, versus some of these other interviews with philosophers and lay people, which has also happened. So there's a lot of things that need to come together. But it's interesting if you want to put your attention to it. So